So really, I love this quote because I think it's so true, and why I do what I do is that money is a major issue for all couples because it, like nothing else we know of, provides the screen on which couples project all their deepest fears, hopes, and hurts in life. And that might be why money shapes our relationship so much, whether we're dating, married, or anything in between. So I was thinking what we could do is have a little bit of interaction, and you guys could just do a reaction and let me know how many of you guys are single, dating, committed, engaged, and married. So on your reaction tab, you got a couple responses. Love it. And I should say the emoji choices were random. I am definitely not putting married as more worse than single or dating or anything else. It all can be good, and it's all just stages of life. But as you guys walk through these stages, hopefully I'll help you not only deal with your relationship and your money, but all these other things, because what we know in research is that financial stress leads to mental health issues. It's been linked with anxiety and depression. It's been linked with physical health issues like obesity, cancer, and it's often cited as one of the top causes of divorces. But that relationship isn't one directional and actually goes back and forth. So not only does financial stress lead to all these crappy things, but those crappy things lead to financial stress. Like if you're having mental health issues, a lot of diagnoses actually have a compulsive spending, symptomology associated with it. If you're going through medical issues, I can tell you that it costs a ton of money. And actually, medical issues is the number one reason for bankruptcy in the US still to this day. And for anybody who's ever had a jerk boyfriend, we know that relational issues sometimes leads to retail therapy and overspending by accident. And I shouldn't say just jerk boyfriends, these girlfriends can be jerks too, but we sometimes use purchasing and using our money as a way to make ourselves happier. And you guys probably also recognize it doesn't always work. And so hopefully I'll be able to give you other ways that'll make you feel happy instead. I do want to focus more in on money conflict in couples because that's why we're here today. And the research isn't great. It shows that money conflict is worse than any other kind of conflicts, that we tend to even curse more when we're fighting about money than who's taking out the trash or how much football they're watching on Saturday or anything else you fight about. It is one of the most common argument starters, and oftentimes it doesn't get resolved because it's not like you can magically make money materialize to fix your problems, right? So instead, you guys have a fight, and then it doesn't get resolved, and it leads to tension and kind of causes all these problems in other areas. Like you started with the money fight, and then you're fighting about something else. And money fights tend to last longer and are more intense. So I want to avoid all of that for you guys. So this is going to be kind of my agenda for today and what we're going to talk about. These are the areas of, money that tends to be most related to financial conflict, that it's financial stress. If we don't have enough money, we're going to have more conflict. What we know is that money doesn't necessarily buy happiness, but it buys the opportunity for happiness, that you have to get to a certain point where your Maslow's hierarchy of needs is met so that you feel okay to do everything else in life. So financial stress is an issue, financial roles, who does what in the relationship, having different views and attitudes and values around money, spending money differently. And then this last group isn't actually specifically about money. It's about the relational dynamics. But what we know causes money conflict is avoiding the conversation about money, keeping secrets around money, often called financial infidelity, and then having poor conflict resolution skills. One thing that's interesting to mention, just because I'm very passionate about it, is that one of the biggest areas that cause money conflict that I didn't list is differences in how much charitable giving to give, how much to tithe or how much to support different organizations. That can cause conflict too. So I wanted to mention it because research shows it's a problem, and I'll try to touch on it a little bit in some of these other categories. Okay, so let's talk about decreasing financial stress. I go into all these topics way more in two of the classes I teach. So if this is something important to you, it might be fun to add an elective in both the financial well-being course that Jessica mentioned and the intro to financial planning course. We talk all about how to reduce financial stress. But one of the first things you need to do for yourself, and if you're in a relationship, is to create overt financial goals. And I know I got into a ton of student loan debt. And so my financial goal all through my 20s, 30s, and so on, were all focused on paying back my student loans. But then it happened and I was happy for like a week. And then I went on my life and never thought about it again. So you can't have just one big lofty goal, right? Instead, you got to break it down into shorter little celebrations, right? Everybody needs a reason to just have a fun night, especially in light of COVID. So instead of having just big lofty financial goals, I want to buy a house, let's break it down and say I want to save $1,000 in a bank account called home down payment. And then when you get to $1,000, you get to have a little celebration and high five each other and celebrate that you did something good instead of waiting until you have, however much you want to save up for your house. So you can talk about the long-term financial goals and you can think about your own long-term financial goals, but start also breaking them down into what are smaller ways I can celebrate. The next best way to decrease financial stress is to create some kind of tracking app in your phone. There's tons of options. I used Clarity Money that just changed names. Mint is a really good option. And if you're in a serious relationship where you have combined financial investments or interests together, there's an app called Honeydew where you guys can track each other's spending and make goals together in not a kind of like spy way, but in a way of like working towards goals together. That's called Honeydew. And what's cool about that, I'll talk about it in a second, is that I don't want you guys to not spend. In fact, I never call it a budget with my clients. I always call it a spending plan because you work really hard to make money and you deserve to buy things that make you happy. Even like the Starbucks lattes. I don't know why everybody's trying to take away Starbucks and avocado toast. Keep those things that they make you happy. Just know where your money is going. And then kind of like that, you'll create a realistic budget once you track for a while. Once you know, okay, these are the things that make me happy. I'm gonna keep them in my spending plan. These are the things I'm gonna cut out. Then you wanna create a budget together. I can tell you, I did not make my first budget until I was in my 30s, and I would not have known how to do it. And copying one on the websites does not work well. So what I really recommend is before COVID ends, go to PowerCat Financial and they'll create a budget for you over Zoom. It'll be so easy, so fast, and that someone who you can outsource it to someone. And really, it's not that scary. All it means is you write down all the money you spend money on from your app. You just copy down and say, I'm going to cut some things out and I'll put some things into savings or whatever. The next way to decrease financial stress is then automate everything. I'm the only financial person who would like you guys to not have to think about your financial task at all. I want computers and robots and other people to do that for you. So what you want to do is automate. So when you get your first steady income, if you have like one of those work service jobs and you're getting something automatically deposited into your account, did you know you could actually not send it to one account, but send it to multiple accounts? So if you get it, like I get a paycheck from K-State, I can say I want 60% of it to go to my checking. I use that for my bill pay. I want 40% to go to the savings account. But you can even do more than that. You could do, I want 40 there, 30 here, 20 here. And then if you're really smart about savings, you name those extra accounts, not just savings account, you name it Honda Civic 2022. Like I'm going to get a new car. And then every time you look at that 20% going in, you see it growing. You're like, I'm one step closer to my Civic. So automate it. And what's cool is you can automate the bill pay, so you never have to worry about being late. You can automate those savings by having those special savings account. And then what I'm really adamant about is getting people to invest earlier. There's this guy named Warren Buffett. You guys probably have heard of him before. He is worth billions and billions and billions of dollars, right? But the reason he's worth billions and billions and billions of dollars is he started investing at 11 and is now investing into his 90s. If he was like the rest of us and only invested from 24 to 65, like most of us do when we're working, he would only be worth 11.4 million with an M dollars instead of billions and billions and billions. And that is the difference of like seconds versus years when you put it into time. It is a crazy amount difference just from using time on his side. And then once you do this stuff, just don't let it sit. Come back and revisit. Say, what are your new goals? Maybe the Civic's out. Maybe you're like, let's move to New York City and use public transportation and save for Europe instead. So don't just let it sit. Come back and revisit together. The more you can daydream, the happier you'll be. I see a couple chats. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, good. Okay. Yes, I definitely will circle back. Okay. So my big thing is that I think we often buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. And I want to change that because I really do believe in the power of buying things that make us happy. And there's some research that shows you how we can get happiness from buying. So first, like I said earlier, you want to track your spending because accidental spending is the worst. If you're just buying chips at a vending machine because you didn't pack a lunch, those chips aren't bringing you happiness. You much rather have a nice lunch from home. It's just accidental spending because we didn't plan on it. That's not the same as saying, I cannot wait to get a coffee that's really 90% whipped cream because I really want some sugar. That is intentional, that is pleasurable, that is going to give you a sporadic burst of happiness. So, what I want you to do is spend money on experiences, spend money on others. Charitable giving or just spending on your friends and family is going to make you happier than buying stuff for yourself. And then buying small and sporadic items that create pleasure. But doing all of this in your budget, in your spending plan. That way you don't have buyer's remorse afterwards. You say, I deserve this coffee. I know I didn't buy that purse last month so that I could enjoy this coffee today. And then I really hope that what you guys start doing when you start tracking spending and creating what's it called, financial goals, is that you and your partner can actually daydream about stuff together. Because what we know from research is that daydreaming about that trip to Europe or daydreaming about that Tesla or daydreaming about your mansion actually brings you more happiness than when you're actually sitting in any of those places. So the more you and your partner can tie your future together by saying, here are our dreams for next year, for 5 years from now, and from 10 years from now, the closer you'll feel and the more happiness you'll get from it. Okay. So another thing that interesting is a big area of fighting in couples is who does what around money. And not to get too gendered, I'm a little bit of a feminist, a very big feminist. What we know is that interestingly enough, in high income families, men tend to be the money managers and money decision makers. In low income families, women tend to, because when you don't have a lot of money, being the person controlling the money is not a very powerful position. And so we also know that what we have seen is that women, despite us increasing education, increasing our income, decreasing the wealth gap, that we're still at risk for less marital satisfaction when we make more than our partners, which is awful. And I want to fix that for all of us, especially my daughters, to make sure that, both genders are happier, because feminism at its roots will make women's lives better, but will make men's lives better when they have a partner that they respect and look up to as well. So anyway, I digress. What I think is really important with financial roles is being clear. You guys don't need to have 50-50, like you take care of bills on Wednesday and I'll take care of bills on Thursday. It is about being clear and feeling like fair, and then working to each other's strengths. Like maybe one of you is more detail oriented and you're in charge of tracking the spending, and one person's more big picture oriented, so you're in charge of like goals and where you want the money to go and what should be your focus. And if you're both leaning into your strengths, it won't feel as much work. And then having conversations about it. I did a study last year and I found out 90% of people had not talked to anybody about money in an entire year. And I know I'm an outlier because I talk about money every second of every day, but a whole year is too long to not talk about money. And so thinking about how can we make a CEO family meeting or a couple meetings once a month to make sure we're on track is really important. And then having conversations about the unsaid stuff about like, how did your families handle money? How did their roles around money happen? And was it healthy? What do you want to bring forward from them? And which ones do you want to leave far behind? It's just so good to do the earlier in the relationship so that you guys start off on a strong, front. And then the third thing on the agenda was how to decrease stress from different money beliefs. And this is my niche, that I truly believe that we are inundated with money beliefs and behaviors and values really, really, really early in life. So early in life, we don't realize other people think differently than us. Like it just doesn't compute because it's so ingrained in our family, because everyone has always been like that, that when we marry someone, we're like, how do you think that way? Why do you have those beliefs? Like, that's not how we act around money. And so these early memories get cemented. We don't even realize people have other beliefs. And we tend to fall in these four very big categories. And you might see yourself in more than one category. That can happen too. I am a money avoidant, ironically, because I talk about money all the time. But when I was growing up, I had beliefs about how I wanted to save the world. I want to make the world a better place. From like 5 years old, I remember wanting to make the world a better place. And that somehow got linked with the idea that money was greedy, or that I didn't need stuff, and that I shouldn't take money from others because there's so many people who need money. And it definitely resulted in like me not getting paid a ton, not taking money. I saw clients for a long time, and this one couple that I loved, I saw for years, and I kept on saying, next time you pay, you'll be better off next time. And then I never did for like 2 years. I just worked for free, and they had plenty of money. They were buying stuff. I could have said, pay me a little bit. But this money avoidance was so ingrained in me, and I didn't even realize that other people didn't think that way. So sometimes money avoidance can translate into this morality thing that money is somehow bad, which is not bad. Or it can be insecurity, like I'm not good at money, or I'm done with numbers, which I also kind of have too. And so either way, it just makes you want to shut down and avoid money. Then there's money worship. And this often you see it if you came up in lower middle class, or even if people around you just happen to be money. Sometimes we're middle class, but we live by rich people and we feel poorer than we actually are. But money worship, anyway, is the idea that wealthy people are somehow different than you. Like even if you make a lot of money, you just won't know some of the stuff that wealthy people have, or the secrets that you know. And there's also this idea that like if I just make more, I will be happier. And that often leads to a lot of emptiness and self-sabotage. You'll see a lot of gambling, like the only way I can get wealthy is if I win it kind of thing, because I somehow am missing something. Then there's money status, which is the idea that like your net worth is your self-worth, that if you don't make money, if you're not successful, that you're not a good person, or that people won't know you're a good person. So you don't have the right purse or the right clothes, then people will see you as lesser than. And then there's money vigilant, which quote unquote is one of the healthier scripts, is that you really privilege money, you think it's important. But the problem is that you're very secretive about it, money at sometimes, or you like feel so much anxiety around money that you don't get pleasure from it. You're just kind of like hoarding it in a way. So what happens is we end up marrying people that are not our money scripts. I mean, no one's going to have the exact same beliefs unless they're raised in the same household and listen to the same things and socialized the same way. And so since we don't realize we're holding these secretive beliefs, we may be having two different conversations. Like, for instance, I used to think my husband was quote unquote cheap. I would be like, why do you gotta be so cheap? Why are you trying to control me all the time? And it wasn't until I learned about money scripts that I started putting together, like, his parents had a bankruptcy when he was young. He had a lot of fear around not having enough. He didn't really see other people as being able to save us if something went wrong. And all of a sudden, his cheapness turned into fear for me. And I was like, oh, I can talk about you being fearful. I couldn't talk about you being cheap or controlling me, but fear I get. And then whole world of conversations were able to be opened up. And so recognizing that we may be coming with different beliefs around money. Oh, and I just saw that chat. Sorry, I just have it distracted. But the chat about the money scripts changing, it absolutely can change. I think we become more money vigilant as we get older, for instance. But I think secretly those money scripts always are like insidiously underlying some of our behaviors. And in fact, one thing I like to say is that oftentimes you recognize your primary money script, but the second money script that you just kind of are like is more shaping your behaviors without you recognizing. So another reason why it's so important to recognize that we came with these different money beliefs is this thing called actor-observer bias. Oh, so sorry about that extra E. But actor-observer bias is the idea that we tend to overemphasize the influence of our behaviors based on the context around us, and we underemphasize our personality, and we do the opposite for other people. The best example is tailgating. I'm a terrible driver. And if I'm tailgating, I think to myself, oh, I hope everybody recognizes I'm late to pick up my kids. I overschedule myself as usual, and I'm really not a bad person. But as soon as someone tailgates me, I'm like, why didn't your mother raise you better? Like, what's wrong with you? Your personality is clearly wrong. And we do this with our partners all the time. Like when we have a bad day, we're like, why can't they see that we had a hard day? And that's why we're snapping. But our partner snaps, we immediately say, he always snaps when he's tired. He's a bad person, or she's a bad person. And so with money scripts, we underemphasize how we're getting shaped by these early beliefs and the values, and we overemphasize in our partners their personality rather than there's experiences that made them feel this way. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? Okay. And the agenda, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the spending styles. So it's so interesting. People always talk about marrying your opposites. And that's honestly not true. We tend to marry people who are very similar to us in our political views and our religious views. The one thing that we tend to find our opposite in is our spending personality. Savers end up being attracted to spenders. Spenders end up being attracted to savers. And so this idea that this is probably one of the only areas of your life that you are opposites may explain why that it is such a, money is such a stressor in our lives. And what's so interesting is this research on tightwads versus spendthrifts or savers versus spenders made us realize that it's not that spenders are more materialistic. It's actually that it hurts savers more to buy things. And what they did is these fMRI tests. Have you guys ever heard of those where they could see where your brain is lighting up? And they could see that people who rated themselves as savers actually had the pain sensation part of their brain, the thing that would light up if you got your thumb under a hammer. It lights up when they buy things, but it doesn't light up for spenders. So it's not like one person is more materialistic or doesn't care about money. It's that it hurts more or less to viscerally pay for something. And so I think if you're in a relationship where you are opposites, there are ways to decrease or increase the pain we may feel when we buy things. So what we know is the same study can be replicated using credit cards or cash. And what we know is there's another cognitive bias called loss aversion, where losing something hurts us more than gaining something. And so when we have to physically give someone something that was in our wallet, our cash, and they take it from us, it hurts more than if we swipe our card and we get to put it back in our wallet. And so using cash, if you're a spender, will make it a little bit more painful for you and a little less painful for them. So maybe you guys can get closer together. Another way to increase the pain is to translate everything you buy into how many hours you have to work for it. So like I waitress to pay for school, and I average like $10 an hour. So if I wanted to go to H&M, even though they have a great deal, and buy something that was $40, I would be like, do I want to work 4 hours for this shirt? And sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is like 4 hours is a lot of jerky clients to have to work with for that shirt. So I don't want to serve that many tables. I don't want to buy it. And then helping you recognize the cost. What are you trading? Everything we buy means we can't buy something. So really thinking about your financial goals and saying, am I trading this sweater for the Civic or whatever your goal is really important. And just remembering that we end up being attracted to our opposite for a reason. That really spenders and savers, if left to go far out into the outward extras of the spectrum, are both unhealthy. It is that balance that we crave, that middle ground where you can spend money intentionally for reasons and not feel guilt afterwards that we want to be in. So again, if you're married, you're spender, and you're looking at them and you're like, can you stop spending money? Remember, part of you wanted that balance. Part of you wanted that fun and freedom and looseness they had. And if you married a saver and you're like, please stop controlling me, remember on some level you respected their self-control, their ability to delay gratification, and that you respect that in them. And if you can keep that in the back of your mind, then you can enter into the conversation and really problem solve together. So another one, and I want kind of like participation this round is about financial infidelity, which every time I say this word, people are like, I didn't know that was a thing. What does that mean? And it's really hard to describe what it means. So I'm going to throw some stats up here. Don't worry, there's not going to be a test. But I want to know how many of you guys think, but how many Americans do you guys think have committed financial infidelity? If you had to put a number on it, say like, I think 20% of Americans did financial infidelity. I think it rarely happens. I think it all the times happens. Yeah, okay. So a lot of people, unlike you guys are a good audience, think that it never happens. Oh, thanks, Renee. Oh, hi, Renee, too. It's one of my favorite students. So that's what's interesting about this is that the rates of financial infidelity actually matter how you ask this question. So if you ask someone, have you ever kept a secret? Rate's only 20%. But if you ask someone, have you had done any of these behaviors like lie to your partner about a purchase, hidden in a shopping bag from your dad, all of a sudden the rates get a little bit higher. And then what's fascinating is you say, did you ever commit financial infidelity? And people are say 67%. But if you ask them, have you ever hid a purchase, hidden debt, or lied about a purchase price, all of a sudden it jumps up to 71%. So the big thing to take away is that rates of financial infidelity wildly vary, and that most people are not going to get caught if they commit financial infidelity because they are little tiny indiscretions, rate like decreasing how much you spent at the store, not mentioning you went shopping. They are micro problems, and it, in a way, are not a huge deal. But the reason I like to talk about, and the reason I think it's important to explore, is that I think these small incidents of financial infidelity can reflect larger relationship growth areas, areas that you guys can work on and get better. And as someone who is conflict avoidant, I can tell you one of the biggest reasons I've ever committed small indiscretions around financial infidelity before is because I didn't feel like I had the right to ask for something from my partner. Like I didn't think I needed it enough, or their needs were more important. And so if you ever have committed financial infidelity against your parents or partner, think about how can I be more clear about my needs and be more assertive about saying, I want this. This would make me happy. I need this. Another reason financial infidelity can happen is that conflict has gotten to a point where it's not healthy anymore. You know, a lot of times we think fighting with our partner is bad, but actually fights are the way you get insights into each other's needs. Like it's a good thing to fight sometimes. But if we're not doing it in a healthy way, then it can become nasty, or we can end up avoiding it. And that could be a bigger problem. Avoiding conflict can be a bigger problem than having fights. It can be a reflection. The reason financial infidelity could be occurring could be a reflection of feeling powerless in the relationship or somebody having too much power. Or it could be an issue of not having trust for your partner, that you don't feel like talking to them about your money. But the bottom line is research shows that even these small financial infidelity can be as damaging as a physical affair. It's going to reduce marital satisfaction if you get caught. It's going to increase risk of breaking up if you get caught. And so I hope that if any of these were true, that you combat it by having financial conversations. The more you can talk happily about money, the easier it'll be to talk unhappily about money. I wish all, oh, sorry, yeah.
Oh, no, I just was gonna, we had one question in the chat that I think before we move to the slide would be great. Could you give like a very general definition of what financial infidelity?
Sorry, I jumped ahead. This is really good. So financial infidelity is simply any time you keep a secret from your partner about money. So like I said, some people will lie by omission. Some people will lie by rounding. I'm a lie by rounder myself, especially with my dad when I was younger. I was like, this didn't cost that much. Or I saved $15. Does anybody ever do that? I would say, Dad, I saved so much money today by shopping. That's never true. But so again, some people, in a nutshell, if you make one lie by omission, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of your relationship. It's not meaning your relationship is bad or anything. But if it comes over and over again, and if the reasons why are you don't feel assertive about your ability to communicate, or you don't feel like the right, or you have so much shame about the purchase itself that either you need to work on relational issues of assertiveness and conflict resolution, or work on your own stuff around buying stuff that you're proud of. So hopefully that answered your question. It is kind of opaque, and that's why stats vary so widely. So again, if it's assertiveness, work on assertiveness. If it's because you feel shame around your purchases, the more you can track your spending and buy things intentionally, you'll be better. And just working on your money shame in total. If you're feeling a lot of shame around money, it could actually be due to your money scripts. And if you're interested, I can send you articles, but you can actually read the scripts that are the most common and see which ones you believe in. They're all partially true. But if you buy into them too much, like money is greed, that might be partially true, but it's not a helpful script to buy into because it'll impact how you make decisions in the future. So I already kind of hinted at it, that another huge area that causes conflict around love and money is just not talking about money. So like I said, in my study, 90% of people had not talked about money to anyone. When was the last time you engaged in a conversation about money with any kind of loved one? Parents, partner, friend? Today, this week, this month, this year? I guess I should say never, not ever. This week is good. This month is good. I get Chef Nevers. I never did because I didn't want to talk about it. Oh, great. So I think that money often is like, by the time we talk about it, it's not a positive thing. It's like, we have to talk about this budget. We have to talk about we don't have enough. And so if there's some way to like put on Leon Bridges, who's my favorite right now, or whatever your favorite artist is, get like the mood right, get some yummy food and sit at the table and have actual fun conversations that are not tied to what you have or don't have, or what you're going to do with the money, but just like the role money has always been in your life. How were your parents around money? Did you feel like you were rich, poor, middle class when you were younger? Now, did that change as you got older? How much can we spend without telling each other? What's that line between privacy and secrecy? You know, I don't want to call you every time I'm going to buy a $10 lunch, but I don't want you to go to Target and spend $100. So like there's that line that is okay, it's not okay. And where is it for both you guys? It might be different numbers. And not that it's a negative, but what does that mean for both you guys? Financial goals, anytime you can house the CEO conversations in your household, focus on positive goals and progress, it'll be better. What are the splurges in your past has made you most happy? What is the thing that you bought that you were like, this gave me pleasure for so long. I'm so glad I bought that Wii or whatever. And then a big one I have is, have you ever checked your credit score? Because I'm obsessed with understanding credit scores now. I don't know what you guys thought about credit scores, but I thought it was like genies or magicians and it was like magical and no one knew the secrets of it. But credit scores are a huge importance to yourself because things cost so much more if you have a bad credit score. But what we also know in relationships research is that credit scores are linked to divorce rates. And we don't know why yet. It might be delaying gratification. It might be personality messiness. It might be financial stress. We don't know why credit scores are linked to poor relationship outcomes, but they are. And right now, it's easier than ever to check your credit score if you've never done it. Go to annualcreditreport.com because you used to get one a year for free. Now you get 4 a year because of COVID. I guess thanks COVID. But check your credit score because you can actually fix your credit score relatively easy, especially how young many of you guys are. And like I said, not to keep on selling my courses, but I can help you in my courses, or any of the PFP 105 courses would help you with this as well, the intro class to financial planning. But if you could see for your car, for instance, how much more money you're spending, over $12,000 more just because your credit score isn't good. That's a whole nother car. Like you could buy a second car just from having a better credit score. Same thing with your house, same thing with insurance, same thing with phones. All those are shaped by your credit score. Well, I already said all this, but it impacts you. It's going to impact you. So check it, talk to your partner. And oh, I'm so glad Emma in the chat wrote this. I feel like you just gave me the best softball ever. But it says, does it have a negative effect if you check your score? Absolutely not. There is something called a hard credit check where you say, I want to buy this house. And then the mortgage company checks your credit score, and that can negatively impact your credit score a tiny bit. When you check your credit score for free 4 times a year, like you're allowed to, it does not impact your credit score. So I'm so glad you asked this. Annika said, what's your best advice to build a good credit score? It is so counterintuitive. So I need to preface it. The best piece of advice is to get credit cards. That does not mean spend a ton of money on credit cards. But once you have your track spending and you have your budget or spending plan in place and you're able to use a credit card like a debit card, having more credit cards actually helps your credit score. You just want to make sure you don't have an annual fee. You never want to close out a credit card. You just want to make sure there's no annual fee and just leave it in your wallet and don't touch it anymore. And it's even better if you just buy a thing one time on it every couple months, pay it off right away. That'll help your credit score. And remember, you don't have to pay interest on a credit score as long as you pay it in the window. If you pay off your credit card every month, you're not paying any interest. You're just building credit. So again, don't go get credit cards and go spend $1 million. Get a credit card once you have your spending plan in place and use it like cash. Anybody else have questions about that? It's such a love of mine, but I know we're getting close on time. And again, take the PFP course or email me and I'll send you a PowerPoint on it. Okay, we're going to talk about improving conflict resolution. And Jessica already had a wonderful guest lecture on conflict resolution, so I'm not going to talk a lot about this. You probably have recordings maybe, Jessica? Yeah, yay! So they can always watch that too. But I love this guy named John Gottman. He has what's called the Love Lab. Any HHS members in here that might know, or is that what it's called now? But the Love Lab in Seattle has studied thousands and thousands and thousands of couples. It's all they do. And they can tell within 3 minutes of a conversation with any couple if they're going to get divorced or not, to a 95% accuracy. It's insane. It's so much cool research. And again, his name is John Gottman. Tons of fun books, great website you can read. But he said when he was doing all this research and discovered he was picking out divorce rates at 95% accuracy, it was blowing everybody's mind. And part of it was something called a softened startup. And I can't remember if I go, no, never mind. So the softened startup is by having a conversation that starts with I statements and making it very specific to a presenting problem, not your partner, then you can have way better conflict. That sounds weird. Way better fights. But then, so again, let me say that again. You start with I statements instead of you are a jerk. It is I'm feeling hurt right now. That way they feel like I want to fix this, not I need to defend myself. So you can start with I statements and then say specifically what is wrong, not what's wrong with them. So it's not I am really upset because you're a jerk. It's I'm really upset because I saw the dishwasher wasn't done and I thought we had talked about this. Just having that little shift from an actual something we can identify and resolve together rather than them as a person. They can't fix them, they can fix what they do. And that's really complaints versus criticism. A complaint is, I don't like this item. I don't like this behavior. I don't like this thing. A criticism is you're not a good person. And one thing that blows my mind is oftentimes fights kind of escalate so quickly that you never actually say what you're fighting about. You end up, both of you are fighting about two different things. Like he's fighting that you're messy and you're fighting that he's clean. And there needs to be one thing you're fighting about. Otherwise you can't come to a resolution. And so saying out loud, we're going to talk about how we have different household cleanliness quotas and how can we find a middle ground for both of us that is putting the problem together and outside of either of you guys and making sure that you're both working on the same problem. It sounds so little, but it's a huge deal. And then noticing the next two are accepting influence and repairs is we're often really bad at seeing the good when we are physiologically aroused, that we tend to downplay when our partner uses a pet name or does something loving while we're middle of the conflict. And if you're able to say, I'm still mad, but I see you trying, even if you don't say it out loud, I'm still mad, but you are at least loving, or whatever, make that spin in your head, what we find is outcomes are better. And really what it's about is this thing called physiological arousal. That if you notice that when we're in a fight, our whole body shifts. There's a great book that's called The Body Keeps the Score. But our muscles tighten, our breath tightens, all these physical things happen to us because of the hormones. So there's this great water bottle example, and I'm sorry the picture looks like 1992, but but what it is that if you imagine glitter sitting at the bottom of a water bottle, that's our normal state. You know, we always have hormones in our body. We always have like a range of tension, anxiety, stress, whatever. But most of the time, we can still process information clearly. And because the glitter is still settled, the stress hormones are still settled. But when we get aroused, when we're in a heightened state, imagine it's like the metaphor, the glitter making it harder to see through. Like no longer can you see through the water bottle. And the same thing, our brain can't process the information. It puts us at risk of saying things we regret, or reacting rather than thinking, or using a less advanced part of our brain, in other words. And what the thing is we forget is that we don't calm down like a switch, that it takes our body time to soothe afterwards. And so oftentimes people getting married, or you ask for advice and people say things like, don't go to sleep angry. I'm like, go to sleep. You're tired. You're not going to resolve anything. It's okay to take a time out. You just have to say, I need a time out because I'm hungry, or I'm tired, or we've been doing this too long and I'm stressed. But I want to come back and talk about this again when I'm calm. I want to come back after I eat a cheeseburger. I want to come back after I get a good night's sleep because you're important to me. So we covered a lot today, and I hope that it helped. And if you want to like get help digging in deeper, Jessica can send my email address to you guys. I'd be happy to talk to you. But I really enjoyed talking to you today, and I hope this presentation has highlighted the need for helping your love and your money. You know, really that's what's so great about being in the PFP department, is their slogan is a head for business, but a heart for people. And I think it's a really cool program that if you want to even take some classes to get literacy rather than to become a financial planner, it's really cool, especially PFP 105, which is called Introduction to Personal Financial Planning, but it's Financial Literacy 101. So you can learn about any of that. As we mentioned, PowerCat is an amazing resource. Get your budget down. Just Google their website and it says really clearly request an appointment and meet with them virtually. And then I hope you guys all consider taking the well-being courses. They are really, really well done. And I really do believe you can't just have one aspect, one pillar of well-being, that you need all of them to truly have well-being. So thank you.